Howdy there neighbors, Ian with eTrailer here. Excited to bring you the CURT Class III 2-inch by 2-inch hitch on our 2024 Subaru Outback. Let's go ahead and get into a couple features and then that install. With the Subaru Outback being such a popular vehicle and great for camping, fishing, or any of those outdoor activities, you may be limited to the space you're going to have between the back of the vehicle and the roof. So to open that up a little more, the best way to do that is going to be to put a hitch on. This CURT is going to be able to hold more than enough weight, boasting 3,500 pounds for towing capacity and 350 for that tongue weight. Of course, you would want to check your vehicle manufacturer specifications to make sure that number's not lower, and if it is, go with that lower number. And this hitch is going to feature a 5/8 pin hole. It does not come with the pin, so do check our website for a lot of great different options on that, including those locking safety options to keep your accessories safe. And then it's going to feature these wonderful, great big safety chain loops that will take both the clevis type and the S-binder style without any catching or binding at all. A couple great measurements to keep in mind while we're going through this is going to be from the center of the hitch pin hole out to the furthest edge on our bumper is about 5 inches. That's going to give you an idea of the clearance if you've got accessories that are going to be sitting in this hitch in case they happen to fold, to see if they're going to make contact with the rear of the vehicle, or if you've got any accessories like a cargo carrier, if that inner wall is going to make contact with the vehicle at any point. And another measurement we'll look at is going to be from the ground to the top of the inside of the receiver hole. We're looking at around 16 inches. That is also compensating for the lift. So from the ground point to the top of that receiver hole again is that 16-inch mark. Now before we get into the install, I wanted to talk about getting this hitch on there. It's really not that bad. There's a couple tedious points between getting your heat shields out of the way and then also running a couple fish wires. But I'm going to walk you through that whole process. And if you happen to watch the video, find this isn't something you feel like tackling, of course, do check out our dealer locator, which is going to give you a good resource to find that trained professional to put the hitch on for you. But for all those DIYers, let's go ahead and hop into that install. Now we will have to drop the exhaust down enough to be able to access all of the mounting points and remove a couple heat shields. But we do want to support that exhaust so that way we don't cause any damage up front at any of the junction points. So best thing to do is just get a strap across the Y pipe right at the axle, getting that tight enough to just support it as much as it can up out of the way for now, and if we need to, we can always loosen down. Now we're going to start over on the passenger side here, but anything we do, of course, would be duplicated over on the driver's side, and that's going to go for the whole installation. So anything we do on one side will be repeated on the other, so that way if you're wondering how to process both sides, they're the exact same, other than just which side it's on. So we're going to start with our exhaust hangers, and those have a real long shaft on the mounting point for the muffler, and so we're going to go for the top of that. Best thing to do before you start trying to pull that off of there is just give it a good little soak down with some soapy water. That's going to help it slide on and off of those shafts much easier. And then you can use an exhaust removal tool, but I found a pry bar, and then using that hanger, lower part of the hanger on the muffler is going to be the easier way to push away from that top mount. And you should be able to slide that off there. Just kind of work the sides back and forth until that slides all the way off. And we'll let that hang. Just in front of the Y pipe, right under the axles here, and you can use the pipe as your bracing point. Again, just give that soapy water mixture on there, and that should just slide right off. Now, it will be difficult to see these last two that we've got to deal with, but on the outside edge of the muffler, just in the front of it, you're going to find there's one more set of hangers on each side, and that should be the last one for us to remove in order for the exhaust to hang down. We are going to be removing the heat shields above each side. With those, there is a total of 4 10mm bolts that go up into the bottom of the vehicle that you'll need to remove. I did want to also give a good warning about the edges of this. It's extremely sharp. Unfortunately, I've already skinned a knuckle on it once, and I wouldn't want any of you neighbors out there to do the same. So as you're removing this, it is going to shift as the bolts come out, and then when you're pulling it out, do be extremely careful. With those bolts removed, you'll be able to pull this down towards the center of the vehicle and kind of rotate it. That'll get it out. Again, watch for those edges, extremely sharp. Now there are instructions on how to trim these down. In our case, this neighbor's requested that we do not trim them, but in the case that you are going to be replacing them, there's a good template that explains how to measure out the trim for these. So unfortunately, we won't be able to show that today, but do check that instruction manual for those measurements. Now we do have a set of rubber grommets that need to be removed from the frame here. We're going to start with this one here at the rearmost, this one here in the middle, and this one at the front. So all 3 of those will be removed, and you're going to do the same on the other side. Just can be done with a pair of needle nose pliers. Just give them a pinch and pull, and they'll come right out, and you can just hang on to those. That way, if you ever do want to remove the hitch, you can close those back up. Before we put the hitch up, there is a set of 2 flat washers. And if you've got the hitch on the ground here, you're going to think about it as this is the rear of the vehicle, and then these are going to live in between the hitch and the frame, so that way when we go to put the nut on, this will be in between the entire assembly. Best way to keep those in place, I've found, is just take a little piece of either masking tape, or in our case we're going to be using packing tape to be able to show lining up with the center of the hole. And then just throw some tape over that, and just make sure that tape's nice and sturdy so that washer does not shift around on you. Now we'll need to run our carriage bolt and the spacer bracket for that. So to do so, we'll take one of the fish wires out of the kit. They only give you 2, so when you're doing one side, don't just yank it off because it'll mess the threading up on this and it won't go on the other side's bolts. And then you're going to be fighting trying to get those into place because we're going to run pretty far down this frame rail. We're going to start at this rear hole here, and we're going to watch that hole while we feed the threaded end of the fish tape up into the first hole, pushing all the way down. You may want to put a hook like I've done here at the end just in case that fish wire decides to move up into the frame on you. And once that threaded end comes through, we're going to take the spacer block and use the square hole on that to push the threading part of the fish tape through, and then take your bolt and work that onto that threading. Once that threading is all the way at the end, we're going to push the spacer block through first, followed by the carriage bolt. And then pull down on that fish wire until the head of the bolt comes out, and we'll leave that to hang. Then we're going to repeat that same process using the rear hole to put another carriage bolt and spacer in the center mounting point, and we'll hop over to the other side and do the exact same process. Now we do need to lift the hitch into place. I've got Jesse here giving me an extra set of hands to be able to get it up there, and with that being said, those rear holes that have the washers on them, use those fish wires as your guidance point and leave the fish wires on there, so that way it helps keep all of the hardware in place. It's not going to shift on you. Even with the tape, I found putting 2 or 3 of them up, if you use just tape, they're going to shift and it's going to make it more difficult to get your hardware in place. We're going to lift that up. May have to go one side over the other at first just to get over the exhaust. And you may find you'll have to drop the exhaust down a little bit further, so just pull that out if you need to, or pull down on it. Feed that fish wire down through that first hole just to make sure it's in place. And then you should be able to get one side lined up. And then come down with the exhaust. Now you will want to make sure that exhaust hanger goes through the hole, otherwise it's going to be extremely difficult to line up. And put some pressure against the side of the bolt, kind of giving it an angle while you're putting on your hardware so it doesn't want to walk back up into the frame. Now we're just going to come back with a 17mm socket and wrench and just get all this snugged up to the frame. Now we're going to use that same 17mm socket, come back through with a torque wrench and torque these to the spec shown in the instruction manual. If you don't have a torque wrench, you got a couple options there. You could either pick one up from our website, or you could head down to the local parts store and either purchase or rent one there. Now we're just going to run through all 4 of those nuts and get them torqued. Now we're going to return all of the hangers back into place for the exhaust system, pushing that back to where it was. Get those heat shields back into place if they're going back up for you all. And that's going to conclude us putting this hitch on. And that's going to do for our look at and installation of the CURT Class III 2" by 2" hitch on our 2024 Subaru Outback. My name's Ian with eTrailer. Really appreciate you watching.